Welcome to Vital Life Stories, where we explore profound journeys of the human spirit and the valuable lessons that shape our lives. Meet Ethan, a man with a heart of gold who lived in a vibrant village surrounded by rolling green hills and nature. From sunrise to sunset, Ethan was always available, fixing fences for neighbors or carrying heavy loads for the elderly villagers daily. He never hesitated to pause his own life, believing that saying yes to everyone was the only way to be a good person. However, his constant availability came at a steep price, as his own farm began to suffer from neglect and lack of care. Night after night, he would return home completely drained, with no energy left to tend to his own crops or personal well-being. The villagers slowly began to take his kindness for granted, expecting his help as if it were their right, not a favor. Even when his intuition whispered that he should stop, Ethan simply smiled and agreed, unable to set a boundary for himself. One fateful afternoon, the sky turned a bruised purple and heavy gray clouds rolled in, signaling a massive storm approaching the village. Just as Ethan was preparing to secure his own vulnerable crops, a panicked neighbor rushed over, begging for immediate assistance nearby. Without a second thought, Ethan abandoned his own livelihood to save his friend's harvest, believing it was the noble thing to do. The storm raged with intensity, thunder crashing loudly as rain poured down, turning the dry earth into a muddy, chaotic mess. He spent hours working in the pouring rain, securing the neighbor's barn and ensuring their livelihood was safe from the destruction. The next morning, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, Ethan walked home, exhausted and covered in mud and debris. He stood frozen in silence as he witnessed the total devastation of his own fields, which were completely destroyed by the storm. While he had successfully saved everyone else, he had failed to protect himself, losing his entire season's hard work in one night. Overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion, he realized that his limitless kindness had ironically led to his own personal ruin and despair. People walked by, offering brief glances of pity, but no one stopped to help the man who had always helped them. Desperate for answers, Ethan climbed the hill to seek the counsel of old George, the wisest man in the entire region. George sat peacefully on his porch, his eyes filled with understanding as he watched the broken young man approach his humble home. Ethan poured out his heart, explaining how he gave everything to others, only to be left with nothing but a ruined farm. The old man listened in silence, then poured a fresh cup of tea, placing it gently before his distressed and weary guest. He motioned for Ethan to follow him to the backyard, where a mighty river flowed steadily through the lush green valley. George pointed to the water and asked Ethan to observe how the river stayed within its banks, nourishing the life around it. He explained that a river without banks becomes a destructive flood, ruining the land instead of bringing life and prosperity to it. "Your kindness is like this river," George said softly. "Without boundaries, it ceases to be useful and becomes a force of self-destruction." Ethan stared at the flowing water, finally understanding that his lack of limits was the root cause of his suffering and loss. George then gave him a challenge. For the next 7 days, Ethan must say no to any request that compromised his well-being. The idea terrified Ethan, as he feared rejection and anger from the villagers if he stopped being their constant, reliable helper. But seeing the wisdom in the old man's eyes, Ethan took a deep breath and agreed to attempt this difficult transformation. On the first day, a neighbor arrived asking for help with a broken cart while Ethan was clearing debris from his field. Ethan's heart pounded as he politely declined, explaining he had to fix his own farm first. The neighbor walked away, confused. A wave of guilt washed over him, but as he returned to his work, he felt a strange, new sense of relief. By the third day, when asked to organize a festival, Ethan firmly said no, prioritizing the reconstruction of his damaged fences. With each refusal, he gained more time and energy to rebuild his life, finding joy in nurturing his own neglected land. Slowly, his farm began to transform from a muddy wasteland into a thriving, organized haven, reflecting his newfound inner sense of balance. He finally had time to eat proper meals, sleep soundly at night, and enjoy the simple beauty of the world around him. Surprisingly, the villagers did not hate him. Instead, they began to treat him with a newfound respect he had never experienced. They realized his time was valuable, and when they did ask for help, they asked with courtesy rather than demanding entitlement. Ethan smiled and agreed to help, not out of obligation or fear, but from a place of genuine abundance and willingness. He returned to George after 7 days, not as a broken man, but as someone who stood tall, strong, and self-assured. George nodded approvingly, pointing once more to the river, which flowed powerfully, yet peacefully, within the safety of its strong banks. Ethan realized that by saying no to others, he was finally saying yes to his own health, happiness, and future success. He understood that true kindness requires a solid foundation of self-respect. Otherwise, it is merely a path to exhaustion and resentment. Now, Ethan could give even more to his community, not by sacrificing himself, but by leading with strength and sustainable generosity. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of preservation that allows your light to shine longer. The village thrived, and at its heart was Ethan's farm, a testament to the power of balance and the wisdom of limits. Remember, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You must fill your own vessel first before you can effectively share with others. Like the river, let your kindness flow freely, but always maintain the strong banks of self-respect to guide its path wisely. As the sun sets over the valley, let Ethan's journey remind us all that saying no is sometimes the bravest thing. Valuing yourself teaches others to value you too, creating a world where kindness and respect can truly flourish together in harmony. Thank you for watching Vital Life Stories. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it to inspire others.